Hello everyone, in the comments to one of my recent videos, I think the one with the stretched Centaur 5 as the upper stage for NASA's Space Launch System SLS, somebody in the comments had suggested a stretched version of the Orion Service Module, and of course that's a fine idea. The Orion Service Module right now doesn't have enough delta V to get into low lunar orbit, and stretching it a bit would allow it to do that, and it doesn't take that much extra. But it's sort of a very straightforward idea. So I don't feel a particular need to pursue it because it's just like, yes, you can add more to the service module, make it a little bit bigger, and that would be better. It would just straight up be better, and there's no question about that. So the reason why the Orion service module was the size that it was the type of mission, and also the idea that eventually Orion would be co-manifested. That means a payload with another payload on SLS. So there wouldn't just be Orion, there would be a module of Lunar Gateway, and then Orion would help tug the module for Lunar Gateway into position. That's why, I mean, the minimum that Orion actually needed in order to get into high lunar orbit and come back was like on the order of 600 meters per second, maybe 800 meters per second to be safe. It didn't need 1,300. The reason why you have 1,300 is so that it can tug Lunar Gateway modules. And so it was going to be placed with those Lunar Gateway modules, and then for SLS to launch both, then you have to limit the size of the service module instead of allowing Orion to get into low lunar orbit. So you can increase the size of the service module now if SLS is not carrying the Lunar Gateway modules. Of course you can. I would rather replace the service module completely. And I would rather replace it with a variant of Blue Moon from Blue Origin. So previously I talked about this with the Blue Moon Mark II version, which is a lot bigger and can do a lot more. But I've been informed that, or in this case Mark III, that's my own upgrade to it. But I've been told that the Blue Moon Mark II, or whichever version you like, is not capable of being fully fueled on launch. The tanks are just not built to bear the full stresses of being full up on launch. They can have a little bit of fuel in potentially, but not fully fueled. So, and we don't want to top off the fuel in Orion for it to get to the moon. That would be an additional hassle and an extra launch. But that's not necessary because they have this small version of Blue Moon, which they have covered in gold foil right now. It's not like this. It's actually just solid gold foil. All the MLI layers, all 100. Anyway, this is a modest 21 tons compared to the 50 ton without the payload version of the Blue Moon Mark II. There's another version. Actually, this is the Mark III. This is the Mark II, which is 48.85 tons. So it's smaller. And presumably it has to be able to be launched fully fueled because they are not planning to refuel it before sending it off to the moon. So this one can do that. It also does not have any apparent solar panels, which means that it must have a fuel cell running on the hydrogen and oxygen, which means that if they can add a more powerful fuel cell to it, it can supply the Orion with power. Otherwise, we could, of course, add solar panels to it. We would want to take off the landing legs, but I've not done that because it was just simpler to keep it this way. For now, I don't want to make a dedicated model of the Blue Moon Mark I in order to use it as the service module for the Orion yet, but this is the idea. And this idea is an interesting one for many reasons. First of all, let's take a look at the delta V that allows. Right now we have the launch escape system on top, and there's 37 tons, but we don't have to have that all the way to orbit. Oh, and somebody had noted that I didn't have all the segments to the launch escape system. I hate launch escape systems, and I try not to pay attention to them, so I must have missed some part. I think I've got them all now. But anyway, let's set that aside for now. It gets tossed off soon enough anyway. And what we have here actually making orbit around the Earth is 31 tons. And then, of course, you would have the Centaur 5 potentially, and that could boost this 32 tons, let's say, over to the moon. I think the Centaur 5 could certainly be able to boost the 32 tons to the moon. And then we have a whopping 3,200 meters per second. Now, probably changes would have to be made to this to make it capable of supplying the spacecraft with whatever the spacecraft needed from the old Orion service module. But it is carrying oxygen, so it can supply oxygen. It will have fuel cells, so it converts the hydrogen and oxygen into water, and it can supply that water if that water is clean enough. Or it could just carry some extra water in a side tank or something like that. And then it can supply power. So generally, it should be able to do the trick as configured right now. And of course, Blue Moon Mark II is eventually going to be capable of landing people on the moon, so it'll be human rated. This one is actually potentially even more robust because it's meant to carry the propellant on launch. So it's got thicker tanks, I believe. And in that case, it should be even better for an Orion service module. So we've got two BE-7s down here. Potentially they could be tilted so that, I mean, I think the gimbaling would be enough to, well, the oxygen is down here. It's tough to tell. Oh, I just noticed in my OBS preview that OBS does not seem to be capturing my cursor even though capture cursor is on. Oh, I see what's going on. I had a display capture that was capturing KSP instead of the game capture that has the cursor on. Sorry about that. So you couldn't see my cursor. My mistake, but it's here now. Anyway, continuing on, we've got 3,200 meters per second, which is a lot. And that's not only enough for this to get into low lunar orbit and come back, that's nearly twice as much as we need. We need about 1,800 for that. So it could tug another spacecraft into orbit. And if we wanted to build a station in low lunar orbit, it could probably actually move the modules into that if you wanted to do that. So that's a thought. Or if you had a small enough lander, it could help. Of course, none of our landers are small enough. So it's sort of useless for that. Then you don't really need it this big. This is actually too big. Launching on the Centaur 5 version of SLS. So then, do we want a smaller service module that's configured like this? We want a Blue Moon Mini? Well, if you're okay with going to the high orbit around the moon, there is another possibility. And that other possibility is maybe the person who suggested the stretch service module was thinking about this, but we just don't need an upper stage then. Well, at least I think we don't. We need to test that. It's close enough that it's tough to tell. So then we just go. Hopefully I've got that on the right node. Yep. No upper stage. It's just SLS tossing it into a high orbit and then it finishing it up all on its own. Is this possible? Well, probably we should put some MLI layers on, actually. I mean, it certainly has them. And then we will see what we can do. Okay, well, I would need the correct timing for the moon, you know, the lunar launch window to be able to manage this properly. Because, again, we have to get the core of SLS to toss us into a high orbit. We'll just assume that if we're in a high enough orbit, we'll work with that. So I'm not anticipating an actual TLI. We'll do the TLI burn, but it won't be to the moon. Anyway, you'll see. So I'm not going to use ascent guidance because of that. And we'll just go and we're going to see if it can work out. All right, ignition. And go. Well, it'll be cheaper. Also, the fact that the blue moon is rather tall means that, I mean, actually we would need a shorter tower. Maybe we'll need an extension of some kind because we got rid of any upper stage. So we're shorter because of that, but Blue Moon is also taller than the service module. I doubt it evens out, but we can solve that problem by extending it higher a little bit. So potentially we don't need to change the tower like that. Still need some way to feed the Blue Moon though. But if you saw in the VAB, we had 13,500 meters per second according to it, which would be a lot. Alright, booster separation. Could have waited a couple of seconds there. Couple of seconds too early. So we're just gonna keep burning with this, and we're gonna get pretty high up. Though we also have to try and get our periapsis negative. So we have to keep it negative. Okay, launch escape system. Off it goes. Alright, so we're boosting that apoapsis up. Oh, certainly not in the right direction or anything. Again, that requires planning. And we want to milk this for as much as possible, of course. NASA will do the proper planning. 4Gs here. Should be right around there. Oh, okay. So we got some serious residuals there. 380 meters per second of residuals. 5 whole seconds there. But okay. That's how it is. That's how it is. So that got us to 9,440 kilometers. Sounds reasonable, I think. I thought they got to higher already, but alright. We'll see what we can do. So this RCS is on. Alright, just wanted to activate that. And then we just coast to apoapsis and make a nice orbit first. Right? Same general plan. We've got the 3,200 here. So then we don't have to go that high. Okay, we'll just do that first. And then we'll see where we go from there. I hope I put the fuel cell in here. It should have a fuel cell. Why do you not have a fuel cell? It doesn't have a fuel cell. It should have a fuel cell. Well, okay, we might have a little bit of a problem there. We'll see how long we last. Okay. So that gets us into orbit. And well, we're actually reasonably in line with the moon, but we're definitely not at the right time. But here we see beyond what the... Let's say we have to go all the way out there and come back in like that. That's a little bit extra. But beyond what the SLS can provide, we need 1,700 meters per second. Which means that what we have left is actually 1,400 meters per second. That means that even after this finishes off the TLI burn, it has more delta V than the Orion service module has to start with. And you can thank Hydrolox for that. Well, Hydrolox and the fact that this is heavier. It's of course a bigger service module overall. We might need more equipment, but I think we've got plenty of margin to get that. No problems. This might be... I mean, if you could get some nicer boosters on SLS or something, give us more of a boost, we could even swing, or this, if this was slightly bigger or more efficient somehow, then it could actually get us to low lunar orbit and back. I mean, it's already planned to be able to last all the way to the moon. So the whole business of trying to make Centaur do that is sort of unnecessary because we already have, in theory, a stage that can do that with this. And we don't even have to wait for Blue Moon Mark II for this one. This is Blue Moon Mark I. It's already getting set up for launch. I don't think it's possible. With the moon over there, I don't think it's possible for me to actually hit the moon like this. We definitely launched at the wrong time for this business. But anyway, I'll finish it off. Just to make a point of it. Oh, interesting. Something else is switching off the engines. I think it suddenly reads my throttle. I think we actually could have gotten more out of the SLS. And we shouldn't have had the 380 remaining, but it just suddenly decided to read my physical throttle lever, which was down. It just did that again. So, yep. Just randomly decides to read the throttle lever. Well, here, you can read it again. Well, that should make the point anyway. We are clearly with an apoapsis beyond lunar level. Hey, we could even maybe get a moon encounter after all, after 28 days. I don't know how that works really. Well, anyway, it's not real. Let's face it, it's just not real. So, anyway, but we could easily have gotten a translunar injection, and we'd have 1,400 meters per second left, which is more than the Orion service module has by default. We could add more stuff to this. If you want solar panels, we could easily accommodate the solar panels. We definitely need the fuel cell. I seem to have missed that in this model. But, you know, we could slap fuel cells on, and we would still have enough to do the high orbit thing with that Orion's service module normally does. And we don't even need an upper stage on SLS. If you want this to do more stuff around the moon, get to low orbit, drop off some other module, then you can use the Centaur stage. But this is an option. And I mean, it might be better if we reconfigure the Blue Moon stage to be more dedicated to this purpose, of course, but in principle, it can work like this. And I eagerly await people telling me I'm wrong. So anyway, it's an idea. There you have it. We probably should lose the landing legs. But no, the Orion can't land on the moon like this, okay? Just to be clear. So with that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below. And I'll see you next time.